Welcome. I'm Julie Bacon, and you're listening to the Mindset Coaching for Handlers podcast, a podcast for dog handlers who are on a mission to achieve big goals. Here I share lessons, insights, personal stories, and tools you can apply during your next show, trial, or test to help you strengthen your mental game and hopefully cue more consistently. Be sure to check out the show notes where you'll find details about the episodes, plus important links, including the link to the Dogged Planner and Workbook created just for handlers on a mission. So if you're ready to improve your competitive mindset, get out of your own way, and connect with your dog like never before, then it's time to get comfy, bring an open mind, and work your mindset. Hey there, and welcome back to the podcast. It's December, which means it's time for our annual REMIX month, 4 of the most downloaded, most loved episodes of 2025. I do this every December because I believe in taking a break, as you well know, and I'm practicing what I preach. But also because the episodes you connected with once are worth revisiting as we head into a new year. Speaking of the new year, if you are setting goals for 2026, don't forget to grab your Dogged Planner or Workbook. It is the easiest way, if I do say so myself, to stay intentional and clear about the kind of team you want to be next year. All right, let's dive into one of your favorite episodes. Hey there, and welcome back to the podcast. All right, this week we are talking about comparison. And comparison is one of those things that I just don't think we ever get over. I just don't think we do. I think that there's, it's always in front of us. There's always something going on. And I think that it just depends on what we do with it and the story we tell ourselves about it. And you hear me with that phrase a lot because I think that a lot of things happen in the world and we get to decide how we want to feel about it and how we want to react to it. And I think comparison's really at the top of that list because it's not going away, right? It's like pressure. It's, those kinds of things. Like they're just always going to be part of the competitive journey. And I think for me, what I've kind of come to, my current belief system, I guess, around comparison rather, is that I think the reason we compare is we are so desperately seeking feedback, measurement, trying to understand like, how are we doing? How are we doing, just in general? And without something to compare to, it's hard to know how we're doing. We go to classes, maybe we take privates, maybe we're doing online stuff. And even still, it's hard to know where we are in our journey. Am I ahead? Am I behind? Am I doing well? Am I right where I should be? So then what happens? We start to look to others. We start to look to other handlers, other dogs, litter mates, etc. And we're like, well, am I better than or not? You're less than them, or where am I? So it's this constant search for feedback, and comparison is like so handy, it's always there. It's always staring you right in the face, right? It's always right there on Facebook, Monday morning brags or, Sunday night brags or whatever, everybody's always like posting. And so constantly you're looking at someone else's highlight reel, right? Because let's be honest, that's what that is, against your reality. And maybe you're going through a rocky part of your journey. And so then you're comparing someone's highlight reel to your rocky part, right? And I think it just all stems from this desire to really understand, like, how am I doing? Tell me how I'm doing. So I think that is why it's always going to be there. It's always going to be present. So today, and also like in the membership all month, we're going to be really breaking down comparison and figuring out, okay, yeah, it exists. Like, what do we do about it? And because there is a way to turn it into something good. There is a way that comparison becomes motivational, even inspirational, and can really push us to do better. Because like jealousy, which comparison and jealousy have I think a big overlap in the Venn diagram. But like jealousy, sometimes it tells us what we want. If we're comparing to someone else who has something that we want, then sometimes it is the spark that we need, or the kick in the butt, or whatever you need, to get us going and to figure out what it is that we want. Okay. So I think that we have to if we acknowledge that comparison is always going to be there, then we stop fighting it so hard, right? Like, don't spend so much energy telling yourself you're bad or you shouldn't or this is terrible or stop thinking this. Like, just see it and go like, yeah, there's comparison sneaking up on me again. How I get to decide how I want to feel about it. Okay. So for today, we're going to talk about like why we first compare, which kind of went into that a lot. But there's some other reasons, and then how it's holding us back. But then most importantly, of course, like how we shift our focus and get more productive with it, or even, like I said, get more accepting and then switch the story we tell about it. Okay. So some of the other reasons we compare, in addition to like desperately wanting feedback, is, it's like triggering. I guess that's really the point of comparison, right? Is comparison would be fine if it didn't trigger you, if you didn't feel a certain way, if it didn't upset you, right? If you were looking at someone else succeeding and you were like, oh my God, I'm so happy for them. Well, then you wouldn't even call it comparison. You would just say like, oh my God, I'm just so happy for them. They've worked so hard. Like, they're my friend, or maybe I don't even know them and I'm really happy for them, right? But when it comes to triggers, some of the triggers can be when we watch somebody succeeding when we're struggling. Okay. Because the contrast, right? The difference there in emotions is really big. And that's kind of the trigger, right? You're feeling maybe frustrated, or you're just kind of in the struggle, in the mud and the muck for a while with, a certain dog or skill or whatever it is that you're working through. And there goes so-and-so who's, posting that they, finished their title in like 3 tries, kind of a thing. And that can be triggering because the distance or the delta, right, between where you are and where that person is big, and you feel it and you're a little jealous maybe even, and it just gets you, right? It gets you. Another trigger is when you see those like perfect, videos and clips and whatever on social media, whether it's a training clip or whether it's something from a trial, but you see that and you're like, oh, I could never, or my dog's not there yet, or my dog's not ready to do that yet. Or I'm not ready to do that yet, maybe even, right? And that gets triggering because, again, whenever there's a big distance between where you perceive yourself to be and where you perceive the other person to be, when that's big, then it is more triggering, right? If you were close to someone, if you're like, oh yeah, I'm almost there too. I just don't have that like one little piece, but I'm almost there. You wouldn't be feeling the same amount of emotional response. Okay. And then, falling behind, if you like, especially if it's friends or littermates or, people you follow closely, when they get ahead, you feel like you're in some sort of a race. Like, there was never a race. No one ever blew the whistle, said, ready, set, go. But for some reason, you put yourself in this race. And, to that, and just as you think about this whole episode, to that, I would say like, why? Why did you put yourself in this picture? Was there some meeting that occurred that all of you decided like, okay, the 5 of us are going to race, ready, set, go? Like, no, you just, at some point you decided that this was a race, a secondary competition that you decided that you were going to participate in. Okay. The biggest problem with what I'm going to call negative comparison is this. It shifts your focus away from your own progress, your own journey, your own training, maybe even, and to someone else, right? You're taking your precious energy units and you're deciding that instead of spending them on yourself, you're going to spend them following this other person. And then as a result, it might lead to, eroding your own confidence, feeling self-doubt, even like screwing with your motivation, because you might just feel like, screw it. Like, why even try? They're already so far ahead. Like, never mind. Okay. So all of this can come even from like one little trigger, one little social media post, and like down the rabbit hole you go. Okay. Slippery, slippery, slippery slope for sure. All right. So when we talk about, that thing of it's shifting your focus, I want that to be, I don't know, like kind of your like your handy red flag, okay? That whenever you catch yourself comparing, I want you to go immediately to, why am I giving away my energy to this team, right? The dog, the person, the whatever, the situation, the environment, whatever it is. Why am I giving my energy away to this team? Okay? Because that brings me to the second thing I want to talk about, whereas we need to recenter our focus and our energy on our own journey, obviously. Okay? So the antidote, if you will, is getting some clarity and some self-focus, and defining your version of success, and looking at your own, eyes on your own paper, right? Looking at your own journal, your own goals that you set for yourself, your own why, looking at your own dog and their training and maybe even their age and where they are. We make jokes about the fact that, girl dogs mature more quickly than boy dogs. Is that one of your problems, right? Are you comparing kind of apples and oranges, or, two different, a cutie orange and a blood orange or something, right? If they're in the same litter. But are you making appropriate even comparisons? Okay. So when we get focused back on ourselves and we reconnect to the clarity that our own goals, our own why provide us, then we realize that your energy and your focus is much better spent on yourself than on others. Okay. The other thing I really want to talk about is, I feel like, especially in my one-on-one coaching sessions, I really feel like a lot of people listening, a lot of people who work with me, right? They know my jam. They're on a performance mindset quest, right? So props to all of you. And so I give you credit that you're all focusing now maybe on your process goals, and you're focusing on those things you want to do and the things you need to work on. And you've got your list and you're making your notes, but you're measuring still on outcome, meaning you're measuring still on the ribbons. So then when comparison comes along, what happens is you're measuring your progress against someone else's outcomes. And that's not going to work either. So we have to make sure that we are measuring the right things. That if you have process goals, then you need to measure your progress against your process goals. It's super hard to say fast. So we have to make sure that if we say that our process goals are what's important, then that's what we're measuring against. How well did we do this weekend against our process goals? Not, because I've literally had handlers say to me, well, I'm really working on this. I'm really working on our rituals and our process goals, but we haven't cued in, 2 months. Well, that doesn't go together. How are you doing on your process goals? So if your process goals are important to you when you walk into the ring, they have to be just as important to you when you walk out of the ring. Okay. And that all ties into everything about this, centering back on your own journey, focusing on yourself, thinking about your process goals, thinking about how you're measuring. It all goes back to what do you want from this sport? What do you expect to happen from this dog, from this trial, from this, everything? You need to, again, focus on your own journey. And that's why I think it's, here's another argument for why you need to write this stuff down. Because then you have a touchstone, something to come back to, something to review when you are having one of these moments. Because like I said at the beginning, this comparison stuff is not going away. It's what you do about it. Okay. So in your writing, make sure that you're writing down your successes. Make sure that if your process goals were important for the weekend, that you are measuring by that on on Monday, if you will, and you're writing down how you did against that and celebrating those successes. Because sometimes, if you're working on connection, that's really hard to see for, a lot of people outside the ring. Okay. But you'll know if you ran more connected, or if your connection was better, or if your dog was happier, or, if you were really working on your footwork and your footwork just slayed it this weekend. You're probably the only one who's going to notice that. And a ribbon isn't going to tell the whole story. Okay. So write down your successes as well. And when you look back on your progress, make sure you're looking back far enough. It's really hard to tell, a week to week, how much progress you're making. But when you look back 90 days or 180 days, you can really start to see the shifts. again, why you need to write stuff down so that you can really see that progress and really understand where you were. I am constantly surprised, even though I've been doing this forever, I'm constantly surprised that when I go back, and sometimes I'll do it at the end of the year, flip back through my planner or, my journals and stuff and look at something and read something from, a year ago, and I'm just surprised and I'm like, oh yeah, I kind of forgot that. Because we leave some of that in the past, maybe because we want it in the past. But we forget. So write it down and look back on it and really acknowledge the small wins, the big wins, because, every journey starts with this one step, and all of those little small changes that you're making are truly going to add up. Okay? All right. So I'm going to give you a couple things to do when we come back. Quick question. Do you ever wish you had more mindset help? Well, the Q membership was created just for that reason. Every month we pick a topic, and then we have 4 lessons, which are kind of like these podcasts, that we dive deeper into. And so if you are ready for more, you're ready for more mindset work, think about joining the Q membership. Annual members get a free coaching session, but you can also choose the monthly option as well. Go to theqcoach.com to learn more. Let's get back to the episode. Okay, so I hinted at this a little bit at the beginning, but we want to use comparison for growth, right? It's better than using it for self-doubt. It's better than using it to erode our confidence. How about we use it to inspire us and motivate us? So when you see somebody out there, again, whether you know them or not, and you start to feel that sneaky comparison come into your brain, or maybe you feel it first emotionally, maybe even feel it first in your stomach physically. So you might, recognize it in different forms as it comes into you, but ask yourself, approach it with curiosity, right? You know how I love curiosity, but ask yourself, well, what can I learn from this? What can I learn from this person, from this dog, from this journey that I'm watching, that I'm so enthralled about? What's my takeaway? If someone's handling looks that great, what about it can you adopt? Can you play the game of run like so-and-so, right? If, Susie McGillicuddy is your favorite handler, then how can you, run a course like Susie McGillicuddy? How can you embody or train to some of those traits or skills that you see in others? If you want to run smoother, if you want to run more gracefully, more connected, how can you then take that away from what you're seeing, write it down in your journal, maybe even in your training journal for the week, and work toward that in your own handling. Okay. And, for people who are, you think, because we only see the highlight reel, but for people you see consistently winning or queuing or, posting the highlight reels or what have you, or just really having a great career with their dogs, find out what their training process is like. Finding out what is the work that they're putting in. And, the tough thing about this question is then the next question you have to ask yourself, are you willing to do the same? And sometimes some of us have full-time jobs that you're like, oh, well, that person is retired, or that person's full-time job is dog training. I can't possibly do that. Okay. Well, then what can you do? And then can you maybe realize that the reason that dog is maybe ahead is because it gets trained for an hour every day or something. I'm making things up. And so, but if you can learn something from their training process or from their training schedule or something like that, or how they approach trials or how they approach training, then lean into that with curiosity and figure out instead of why not me, just say, what's next for me? What is my next thing that I'm going to do? If that's what I want, what am I doing next? What am I willing to do? What can I do? How am I going to use what I see externally to change both how I feel internally, but also what I do on a day-to-day basis or on a week-to-week basis? Okay. All right. A couple hints on avoiding the spiral because sometimes with comparison, there's a spiral and it's not upwards. It's usually downwards. Okay. So as far as social media goes, like, ingest your social media responsibly, okay? Like, there's a lot on social right now, just in our world in general, and that can really impact you. That can really put you in a mood, so if you see, it's not even always the post about the great dog that triggers you. Sometimes you are reading a bunch of stuff on social media that puts you in a mood, if you will. And then you see that one post from that one person who you're kind of jealous of and kind of comparing yourself to, and that sets you over the edge. So make sure you are following appropriately, ingesting social media appropriately, and follow people who inspire you. Like, instead of maybe only following your friends, follow some people that you don't know but you look up to, so that you can see more of that and you are inspired by it and not deflated by it. Okay. And, for those friends who maybe, you're like, oh, that litter mate that always, gets me going or something like that. Well, then just hit like and scroll on by. You know what I mean? Just like, let it go. Just don't wallow in those posts. All right. And then I'm going to give you a couple ways that you can shift your focus when you kind of need a quick reboot. Okay. So first, here's a few steps. First, acknowledge it, right? Like I said at the beginning, it's not going away. Acknowledge that's what it is, what you're feeling, what the trigger is, right? Because if you know your triggers, you can start to either avoid them if possible, not always possible, or at least prepare for them. And then you'll see them coming and you're like, okay, I know what's going to happen next. And then you feel more prepared, AKA more in control. We love being in control. So acknowledge it, be aware. I always say this, awareness is everything. Awareness is key. Like, start with awareness. And then secondly, reframe it, right? How can you use this bit of comparison as motivation or curiosity? Like, ooh, what are they doing? I'm interested in that. How could I get that? Like, maybe I should take this video back to my, group class and we can set up that same, exercise, or something like that, right? So again, you don't want to just jump to judgment. You want to see, like, is there something positive that you can get out of this comparative moment? Okay. And then finally, redirect that focus to your own journey, eyes on your own paper. Okay. Ask yourself, what is one step that you can take towards your own goals, right? Because obviously this is setting you off for a reason. You're not where that person is or where you want to be or something. So what's one step you can take? Just make it one. Don't overwhelm yourself. Don't make a list of 20, just one. Pick one thing that you can do to shift your thinking back towards yourself and then back toward something actionable, right? Where you feel a little more in control. All right. And finally, remember, you're not competing really against other handlers, competing with them, alongside of them, but you're really truly competing with yourself, especially in moments of comparison, right? Your comparison is telling you that you are fighting with something, unhappy with something in your own world. And so that's where the fix, if you will, needs to start. Okay. All right. So in conclusion, and AKA for homework, this is what I want you to work on. I want you to become really aware of when comparison enters your world, right? And really start to notice like what it does. Is it a mild comparison? Is it a big trigger? Is it one person or, that triggers you on a regular basis? Like, just start to learn, start to ask questions about it instead of judging it. And instead of saying like, it is true. Comparison is the thief of joy for sure. However, there are different ways to look at comparison. And first you need to understand what kind of comparison is it that doesn't work well with you, right? And how can you turn that around to being motivating? Okay. So think about something you can celebrate, instead, turn it around. But again, this week, I just want your homework, if you will, your homework is to just figure out where does it come from most of the time? And like, what are my normal triggers to this? What are my normal responses? And then what can I do to turn this around? Okay. All right. So please take this seriously. I know comparison is such a big thing for so many of us, myself included. And just remember, look at your dog. Your dog is not comparing him or herself to others. Your dog didn't ask to enter the trial or didn't care if it cued today or yesterday or last week or whatever. So we need to just think about perspective and realizing that comparison is something that we can control. It's not this thing that we can get taken away with. We actually get to control how we feel about it and certainly what we do with it when those moments pop up. Okay? All right. No matter what you're doing this week with your dog, I hope you have a fantastic time. Thanks so much for listening to the Mindset Coaching for Handlers podcast with me, Julie Bacon. I am so grateful for your precious time. Check out my Dogged Planner, workbook, and journal available on Amazon. Just search for Dogged Planner. I also offer monthly membership that's perfect for ongoing support of your awesome goals. Check out theqcoach.com for details or just stop by and check out all the ways you can work on your mindset. And be sure to follow me on Facebook and Instagram at theqcoach and let me know how it's going. Finally, please share, subscribe, and leave a review. This helps us podcasters tremendously. Plus, I know I get my best podcast recommendations from friends. Thanks and have a great week with your dogs.